The last two schools that have most recently won national championships in our sport, it's UConn and Kansas. UConn back-to-back in 23 and 24. Before that, Bill Self's Jayhawks both lost as favorites to bad teams this weekend. Final score, Seton Hall 69, UConn 68 in OT in Newark. Wild game. It's a quad 3 loss for UConn to a team that entered the weekend with a 1-12 record in the Big East and ranked 224th in the net. Yuck. Final score, Utah 74, Kansas 67 in Salt Lake City. That's a result that dropped KU to 4-7 in quadrant 1, just 9-8 in the first two quadrants. Norlander, Kansas and UConn, it was a while ago, you might not remember, but they were first and third in the preseason AP poll. I no longer have either of them in the top 25 and 1. Which team are you least optimistic about moving forward, the Jayhawks or the Huskies? Can you I'll ask it that way. Which one are you like, I think I'm out on this team, I don't see it anymore?
Well, if you're listening and you heard Parrish say 1 and 3 and you're like, who was 2? It was Bama, by the way. Auburn preseason was number 11. Kansas. Now I would say Kansas. Now Kansas lost to a marginally better team at Utah. I mean, Seton Hall had one win in the Big East this season before Saturday, and it was at home. It was also in overtime, and it was against DePaul. Brendan Marks of The Athletic had, let me find this real quick. The answer is Kansas, and I'll explain to you, but I do want to give him credit because he went and did the digging in real time on Saturday, and I saw he popped this up. UConn losing, albeit on the road, but against Seton Hall, registered as a notable loss by a reigning champion. So the 5 worst losses of the Ken Pom era by a reigning champion, and obviously the subsequent season, it was UConn to Houston in 2015, which is hilarious that UConn losing to Houston. Folks, don't forget how awful Houston was before Kelvin Sampson got there. That's the worst ever. It was 2-14 in 2015 when the reigning champion Huskies in the Kevin Ollie era lost there. Number 2 is what happened Saturday when Seton Hall was 2-13 in Ken Pom at the time of the loss. UConn also has the number 3 one on the list in 2005. Weird pattern. They lost to UMass when UMass was 180 in 05 post Emeka Okafor. Then Virginia to BC 4 years ago, and then in 2018, Carolina after winning. I remember this loss to Wofford when it was 163 at Ken Pom. So that is alarming, and I want to get on UConn. But I would still say that Kansas is a bit more because it's like we've seen. I get that Kansas got into the top 16 on Saturday's bracket reveal, and it's had some good wins. I would say that I see a lower ceiling on Kansas than I do UConn, while admitting on both of these teams, I've about reached the point here where even getting them into the second weekend is a hard proposition, Parrish. And for the UConn, like the UConn loss to Seton Hall is the result now that is making me say, okay, you know what? They've got talent. They've got a great coaching staff. There is a way about this UConn team where if they've got it all together, they're healthy enough, like, you know what? They could be a fascinating matchup for a number of teams. And you tell me they hit lightning in a bottle and they win 3 or 4 games in the tournament, who in the world's going to be shocked? That said, I've shifted off of that because you can't. And I know that like there were some brutal non-calls. I get it. I don't even disagree with it. You cannot get yourself caught in a game at Seton Hall. Seton Hall is terrible. Terrible. Zero excuse for getting caught. Although it is a bugaboo game, Dan's lost 4 in a row at his alma mater. He's 1-4 against Seton Hall all time on the road there. But it would be Kansas because the team is like stuck in, it's not even third gear. It's like it's between like second and third. Like they can't even jostle the joystick on it. And every season brings new storylines, intriguing plot twist. GP, this is that. I mean, preseason number 1, preseason number 3, 2 programs that you just set it up. The most recent national champions in our sport, and they are downright sputtering. I don't have a ton on the Kansas-Utah game because, in all transparency, like I was on the HQ desk for about 2 straight hours, so I barely got to watch it, but I was trying to keep an eye on a little bit here, and I know they just could not keep up, and Utah hit some big threes, but Kansas, you can't lose that game on the road. Like, I mean, you can. You're going to still get in the tournament. This is still champagne problems, big picture speaking, but this is now 2 years in a row. Preseason number 1 with vastly underachieving teams. How do you answer it? Which one do you have less faith in?
I think I've got less faith in Kansas. UConn just got McNeely back. They still got, I think, room to grow. This Kansas team, I think the way you put it is accurate. Like they feel like they're stuck and they can't get out of whatever they're in. Since February 1st, They're 2-3 with 3 losses to unranked teams: Baylor, Kansas State, Utah. In that stretch, they're 36th at Torvik. And here's the real problem: 115th in offensive efficiency. They can't score. So tell me if this is concerning big picture if you're a Kansas fan. We've mentioned that the Jayhawks were preseason number 1 this season. Do you know who was preseason number 1 last season?
It was KU, yes.
Just 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
This program that used to win Big 12 titles with no problem, with barely without exception, and then won the 2022 NCAA tournament, has been preseason number 1 the past 2 seasons and wildly disappointing both times. Preseason number 1 last season, finished 23-11, tied for 5th in the Big 12, lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament, finished 59th in offense and 20th in defense. This season, preseason number 1, currently 17-8, tied for 5th in the Big 12 again, 48th in offense, 5th in defense. 2 straight disappointing seasons for 62-year-old Bill Self, who was widely considered the best coach in the sport before these 2 years have taken. And still, let me be very clear, is still considered one of the great coaches in the sport. Let's not get it twisted. Like you mentioned, these are champagne problems. Kansas relative to the rest of the sport is still good. It just feels really bad relative to what we expect from this program. But would that concern you if you're a Kansas fan? This is 2 straight years where you had the highest expectations and you're just sputtering along both times. Last season, injury related much more than this season too.
Yeah, there's reason to kind of just, you are in unfamiliar territory. This is just not, and again, going to reemphasize this yet again, because 98% of fan bases are looking at Kansas as like, okay,
all right,
you understand how good you've had it forever. Self, Roy Williams, the majority. You got to go back to Naismith when you sucked. Okay,
yeah, he was terrible.
I know.
The guy's an embarrassment to the sport.
I know.
The guy who invented the sport is an embarrassment to the sport, if you can wrap your head around that.
Established on the show, okay? Imagine inventing a sport and being terrible at coaching at it. Could not be me.
It's unbelievable.
Self had that heart procedure back in March of 23. Remember, he didn't coach in the tournament. Right. Kansas was a 1 seed that year. They got bounced by Muss's Arkansas team that season there, and that was just they didn't get to the second weekend, and most importantly, like, Self has been able to be healthy on the recovery and all that. But when I was looking at this yesterday, I was just like, all right, they won the title. What did they do in 23? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Bill had to go through the procedure, and there was all this talk about, was he going to be able to coach and not, and he didn't wind up doing it. And since then, it's just been up and down, up and down. A year ago, remember what he said? He said, I think did he admit it in real time, or did he admit it like right at the end of the season? He was like, this is the first time in my career where I started looking ahead to next season before this season was over.
No, the season was we were still in the season, and he was talking about next season. That happened.
Yeah. And so now, like, this is next season. Like, we're here, and different roster with some of the same pillars. I don't think Bill Self should be anywhere, as a fan of the game and just in general, I don't think he should be anywhere close to retirement. I don't think that he is. I don't think Kansas fans want him to be that. And we're not even suggesting that. We're just stepping back, taking stock, and saying, highly accomplished coach, multiple national championships. What's going on here? And can this get back to the way that it was? I know there are some cynics out there that say, oh, look at how things change once we let all the schools get in on the NIL goodness and allow everyone to start really paying players. Look at how much I get it if you want to have fun with it and poke fun. I'm not going to say you can't do that. I won't even say you're all the way wrong on that. I don't think causation and correlation really intertwine the whole way on that. But it is certainly something that is happening here. And right now, it is up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Since January 11th, or since January 22nd, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, which means good news, I guess. I hope Tuesday night you're going up against a BYU team that's a bubble team that got a big win against K-State over the weekend. And if the pattern holds, you'll get a road win there. But yeah, I think Kansas fans are just in general, like, they're just like, all right, we'll just see how this plays out. Maybe they can get it right if we can make the Sweet 16 sweet, but we need to just start over. Like the Dickinson and KJ Adams and DeJuan Harris, like, can you get us to next year when we're going to bring in one of the most electrifying guards that Bill Self has ever recruited, and hopefully, we can get back to the way that it used to be.
I think sometimes when people are talking about things and sort of thrusting opinions at it, like Bill Self is this or the program is that, it's helpful just to talk about it factually. Just say things that are undeniably true. This is true. Bill Self has been a power conference coach for a quarter century. He has never gone through 2 straight seasons like this. That's just true. That's true. So now we can start talking about why, if you want to have a conversation about why, but that part's true. He's been a power conference coach, arguably the best power conference coach for a quarter century. And his 2 worst seasons relative to expectations are this one and the last one. That's true.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I wrote recently, Kansas has a program, Parrish. It's even before him. Hasn't gone 2 straight seasons outside the top 3 in its league since I was 1 year old, like 1982, 83. Like it's been a long time. So we agree on that. What did you make of UConn though? Like, the way they lost. Okay, they had no business being in a tight game, and then they shouldn't have lost. They blew. They had a 7-point lead with 45 seconds to go in regulation, Parrish, and then they led by 5 in the final minute of the overtime session. They had a couple of inbounds plays that I couldn't even believe played out the way that they, like, a team coached by that staff melting down in those kind of moments. And credit to Seton Hall for causing the issue. It's a road environment. You get yourself caught in Jersey on a Saturday afternoon, maybe anything can happen. But it was some freakishness. There was a missed dunk that led to the carom way out, and then Seton Hall, Adewusu hits the 3 to get to overtime. I think that's the first time I've ever seen and I don't know if I've ever seen that before. A missed dunk
is crazy.
Goes long. The team recovers it, has time to kick it out, left wing, hit the 3, send it to overtime. I just don't ever. I'm sure it's happened at some point, but that exact sequence feels 1 in a million at best there. UConn's possessions in the final 8 on Saturday of overtime: foul, turnover, forced a missed layup, UConn turnover, foul on Isaiah Coleman, UConn turnover, forced a missed layup, allowed Seton Hall to get the rebound, and then the tip in. And again, like I get it. There were some McNeely got hacked and there was no call. I'm not denying any of this stuff. But then they missed the heave at the end, and Seton Hall took advantage of opportunities that were right in front of it. Isaiah Coleman stepped up big there, and the Huskies now they lose. Your thoughts on Dan Hurley's program having a bit of up and down in itself? They're winning on the road at Marquette and UConn. Marquette and Creighton. And then they're getting picked off by maybe the worst power conference team in the sport.
No, their performances are like this: up and down, up and down. You know what else is like this? Everything connected to them. Yeah. Everything connected to them. And I know I never coached the game, so I might not be qualified to speak on this or anything else. But I imagine when everything connected to your program is uneven and just up and down, and injuries and somebody back into the lineup, out of the lineup,
right,
and you're having to spend good portions of every press conference explaining what it is you said during a game, or what it is you did during a game, or what it is you said to a fan after a game, or what it is you said to a ref after a game. I just think for a program that has been so laser focused in recent years and bragged about it, it seems like the focus is all over the place right now. All over the place right now. And I think when your focus is all over the place, then it can become easy to, have these twists and turns in your season. But I say that as a non-coach. Yeah.
Listen, I was there in Maui. They lost close to Colorado, but they still lost to Colorado, like one of the worst teams in the Big 12. They got rolled by Dayton, a Dayton team that we thought was going to be an at-large candidate. Now isn't that. And this is also a UConn team that needed overtime to beat Xavier at home, not a projected tournament team. It needed 2 close shaves against Butler, including an overtime win at home. It had a 3-point win at home against Providence. So it has been flirting with fire here, and it's gotten burned. Now there's some good wins, some tough losses. I think UConn right now tonight is a 9. Like, I think it's sitting on the 9 line. So it's not teetering on not being in the tournament. I don't think it's that at all. And I would think
I don't either, but check this out.
Okay.
And I told him to clip this last night. I was like, buddy, if you want to get Jerry Palm some death threats and go viral, clip this.
Let's not advocate for that, but go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to advocate for Jerry Palm death threats.
Okay.
But Jerry on television last night said, it's not hard to envision an NCAA tournament without UConn. He went there. And we were like, whoa.
I still think
they're going to get to the tournament. I agree with you. But our resident bracketologist is like, this resume's got some real issues. And if they don't get it straightened out, we could do a We could do a 68-team tournament without our back-to-back champs. I don't think that's going to happen, but Jerry, and I want to be fair to Jerry. Jerry did not say, I think that's going to happen.
Right.
He's just saying it's not as far-fetched as you might imagine.
They've got at St. John's next Sunday. I'll be there at the Garden to see that. They're at Providence. Everything else is home. They've got Marquette at home, penultimate game in the regular season. So we'll see.
And some of it, some of it was just unlucky. Like the whole missed dunk sequence is just that's just stupid, unlucky stuff. But here's the real problem. And we both love Shaheen, but his team is bad. We both know why his team's bad, because they're broke. But they're bad.
Worst NIL in the Big East, and it's not close.
They're broken bad. All right. We love Shaheen, but they're broken bad. You're up 5 with 13 seconds left in regulation against a broken bad team. Just finish it. Then you're up 5 in OT against a broken bad team. Just finish it. All right. You didn't ever expect to be in a tight game with Seton Hall late, but now you're up 5 with 13 seconds left. Knock it out and get out of there. Okay. You didn't expect to be in overtime against a team with 1 Big East win, but here you are. Now you're up 5. Knock it out and get out of here. That they couldn't just get out of the game at either point would be concerning for me. Some of it unlucky, but some of it their own doing.
Yeah, and I acknowledge, Hassan Diarra is he's busted up. He's not practicing. The point guard isn't what the situation isn't what they wanted to be. Mahaney hasn't been what they expected him to be. McNeely, he's had a good game. He was just okay. Caravan has really good spots, but you can't get caught in that kind of game. UConn remains, even with it just remains as compelling as almost any team in the country, just for reasons that we didn't necessarily expect to see.